Gather round, dear viewers, for a tale of love, betrayal, and second chances that will leave you as shaken as a snow globe on Christmas Eve. Enjoy the story. Greg Grayson had it all this Christmas season: a beautiful wife, Jessica, 3 adorable kids, and his pride and joy, Greg's Place, the cozy family restaurant he had poured his heart into for the last decade. With just a few days until the big holiday, Greg was in full Santa mode, his apartment overflowing with carefully wrapped presents and festive decorations. He had even splurged on hiring jolly old Saint Nick himself to make a surprise visit and delight little Timmy, Sarah, and baby Noel on Christmas morning. But Greg's perfect holiday was about to implode like an undercooked soufflé. As he sat on the couch admiring his Christmas handiwork, Jessica walked in, her face tense and serious. "Greg, we need to talk," she said bluntly, perching on the edge of an armchair. "I've been having an affair." Greg's jaw dropped as his picture-perfect life began to crumble before his eyes. Jessica, his college sweetheart, the mother of his children, in the arms of another man? It couldn't be. "It's been going on for months," Jessica continued, twisting her wedding ring anxiously. "I didn't mean for it to happen, but I'm in love with him, Greg. Mike and I are getting married." Rage and despair battled for control of Greg's emotions. Mike Hannigan, his so-called buddy, the guy he had watched Patriots games and shared beers with for years. "How could you do this to me, to our family?" Greg sputtered, hot tears pricking the corners of his eyes. "After everything we've been through together? What about the kids?" "The kids will be fine," Jessica said coolly. "Better than fine. Mike is a wonderful man and he loves them like his own. I'll be taking full custody, of course, and I'll be keeping the house and my car. It's only fair. You have your silly little restaurant to fall back on." The presents and twinkling lights seemed to mock Greg now, as his family and future slipped through his fingers. All his carefully laid Christmas plans were now as hollow and meaningless as his sham of a marriage. First his wife, now his children, his home. Was there anything Jessica wasn't going to take from him? Crushed and defeated, Greg threw some clothes in a suitcase, scooped up his golden retriever biscuit, and drove through the softly falling snow to his modest country house 2 hours outside the city. As much as it pained him, he knew he needed to give Jessica space right now. But as the city lights faded in his rearview mirror, Greg silently vowed that he would fight for his kids, whatever it took. They were his whole world. The next few weeks passed in a depressed fog for Greg. Between crashing on the lumpy couch at his rustic cottage and occasionally catching a few restless hours on the worn leather banquette at Greg's Place, he felt anchorless, cast adrift. Even his beloved restaurant, once his pride and joy, held no appeal anymore. Trendy new bistros and gastropubs had popped up on the block, siphoning away Greg's once loyal customers with their Instagram-ready small plates and craft cocktail happy hours. As Greg listlessly picked at reheated lasagna and slugged whiskey neat in his cramped back office, his assistant manager Lori poked her head in, her auburn ponytail swishing with concern. "Greg, the produce order is here and they forgot the arugula again. What do you want me to do?" she asked. Greg shrugged apathetically. "I don't know, Lori, just handle it. I trust you. Make whatever decisions you think are best." Lori bit her lip, clearly troubled by her boss's uncharacteristic malaise. "Okay, I'll take care of it. But Greg, I'm worried about you. I've never seen you like this. Is there anything I can do to help?" "Not unless you can turn back time and stop my wife from shacking up with my lying, cheating ex-best friend," Greg said bitterly. "I'll be fine, Lori. I just need some time." But time was a luxury Greg didn't have. That weekend, his buddies Jim and Mike strong-armed him into joining them for a guys' steam room session at the athletic club, hoping to shake him out of his funk. As the hot, thick steam swirled around them, Greg finally let loose, pouring out his anger and heartache to his friends' sympathetic ears. "I just don't get it," Greg ranted, his face flushed from the heat and emotion. "We had a good marriage, or at least I thought we did. How could Jessica throw it all away like this? And for Mike Hannigan of all people." Jim clapped a beefy, reassuring hand on Greg's slumped shoulder. "Forget that cheating hussy. You're better off without her, man. It's her loss." Easy for you to say, Greg grumbled. You're not the one who has to start over at 45. I'm gonna be one of those sad old divorced guys who eats microwave dinners alone every night and tries too hard to impress the hot young bartender. Nah, a good-looking guy like you? You'll have the ladies lining up in no time, Mike said. But hey, speaking of hot young things, what's the deal with that smoke show assistant manager of yours? Lori, right? Don't tell me you haven't noticed what a babe she is. Hey now, she's my employee, Greg protested. I can't be thinking of her that way. It wouldn't be right. Mike rolled his eyes. Always such a Boy Scout, Greggy. I'm just saying, she seems super into you. And honestly, with the way you've been moping around lately, she's probably the only thing keeping that joint of yours afloat. Jim chuckled. Yeah, no offense, man, but with how checked out you've been, I bet even the dishwasher could run Greg's place better than you right now. A light bulb went off in Mike's head. Dude, that's it. I've got an idea for how we can snap you out of your misery and save your floundering restaurant at the same time. Let's make a little bet. If your dishwasher can't turn $1 million profit in the next month, you have to sell Greg's place. Walk away and start fresh, no looking back. Greg's stomach churned at the thought of selling his restaurant, his life's work. But his fighting spirit had been so beaten down by Jessica's betrayal, part of him wondered if his friends were right. Maybe it was time to cut his losses and move on. $1 million in a month? No way, Greg said. You're on. The next day, Greg called an all-staff meeting at the restaurant. His motley crew of servers, cooks, and bussers looked nervous as they gathered around, bracing for bad news. I know there have been some rumors flying around about the future of Greg's place, he began solemnly. And the truth is, I haven't been at my best lately. I've been dealing with some personal issues that have taken me away from what really matters, this restaurant and all of you. Fortunately, I have a solution, he continued. I'm going to be taking a much-needed vacation to clear my head and get back on track. And while I'm gone, I'm leaving Gina in charge. A gasp rippled through the room as Greg gestured to a surly, heavy-set woman in a grease-splattered apron. Gina had been a dishwasher for years, but she was an ex-con with a mysterious past, and everyone knew it. Gina has been with us since day one, and I trust her completely, Greg said, shooting Gina a grateful smile. She knows the ins and outs of this place better than anyone. I have total faith that she'll keep the ship running smoothly in my absence. As the shell-shocked staff dispersed back to their stations, Greg's mother Anna cornered him, her lined face etched with worry. Gregory, have you lost your mind? She whispered fiercely. Leaving a convicted criminal in charge of your restaurant? Think of the liability. Ma, you're always telling me I need to see the best in people, Greg said calmly. Gina did her time, and she's been nothing but reliable ever since. She deserves a second chance. Anna pursed her lips. I just hope you know what you're doing, son. Greg hoped so too. As Greg finished packing his suitcase for his impromptu island getaway, a soft knock sounded at the door of his office. Lori poked her head in, a hesitant smile on her face. Hey, boss. Just wanted to let you know that everything's all set for your trip, she said. Gina's got the kitchen under control, the supply orders are in, and I'll make sure the front of house runs like clockwork. You just focus on relaxing and recharging, okay? Greg felt a rush of gratitude for his capable, loyal assistant. Lori, I can't thank you enough for holding down the fort while I'm gone, he said. I know I haven't been the easiest person to work for lately, but I really appreciate your support. I don't know what I'd do without you. Lori ducked her head shyly, a pretty blush coloring her cheeks. Oh, it's nothing, she demurred. You've been going through a tough time. I'm just happy I can help take some of the load off. An idea suddenly occurred to Greg. Hey, why don't you come with me? He blurted out. Lord knows you could use a break too, after putting up with my sorry ass these past few weeks. I could really use a friendly face around. Lori's eyes widened in surprise. Oh, wow, Greg, that's so sweet of you to offer, she stammered. But are you sure? I wouldn't want to impose. I insist, Greg said firmly. Consider it a bonus for being such a rock star. Now go home and pack a bag. Our flight leaves in 3 hours. As Greg watched Lori scurry off with an excited grin, he felt lighter than he had in weeks. Maybe this vacation was exactly what he needed to shake off the funk of his divorce and rediscover his zest for life. And having Lori by his side certainly didn't hurt. The girl was a knockout, with her flowing auburn hair, sparkling green eyes, and killer curves. Greg had always kept things strictly professional between them, but he'd be lying if he said he'd never noticed how attractive she was. Was it so wrong to want a little companionship after the hell he'd been through? Greg and Lori's island adventure was like something out of a rom-com montage. They sipped frozen margaritas on the white sand beach, snorkeled in the crystal-clear turquoise waters, and watched the sun sink into the ocean every evening, painting the sky in brilliant streaks of orange and pink. Removed from the stress and heartache of his everyday life, Greg felt the knots of tension loosening from his shoulders. And as he and Lori talked and laughed together over candlelit dinners and moonlit strolls, he began to see her in a whole new light. Lori was whip-smart, with a wicked sense of humor that had Greg in stitches. And beneath her bubbly exterior, she had a depth and sensitivity that surprised him. As they swapped stories about their pasts and dreams for the future, Greg realized how much they had in common. Like him, Lori was passionate about food and hospitality, with a drive to succeed that had propelled her from a small-town diner to the big city. And also like him, she had been burned by love, her heart broken by a string of bad-news boyfriends who never appreciated what a catch she was. One night, over a bottle of rum and a starry sky, their simmering attraction finally boiled over. Greg couldn't say who made the first move, but suddenly they were in each other's arms, their lips crashing together in a hungry kiss. They stumbled back to Greg's hotel room in a tangle of limbs and discarded clothing, losing themselves in the heady rush of skin on skin. All thoughts of Jessica and the shambles of his old life vanished. For the first time in months, he felt alive, desired, whole. Lori wasn't just a rebound or a balm for his battered ego. She was a new beginning, a second chance at happiness, and damned if he wasn't going to grab it with both hands. When their magical island getaway came to an end, Greg and Lori returned home walking on air, excited to see what the future would bring. But as they pulled up to Greg's place, they were shocked to find the parking lot jam-packed with cars. A line of eager customers stretched out the door and halfway down the block. "What in the world?" Greg muttered as he and Lori elbowed their way inside. The restaurant was completely transformed. Gina had ditched the generic diner decor for a cozy, rustic farmhouse vibe, with gingham curtains, mason jar flower arrangements, and chalkboard menus advertising hearty comfort food favorites. The servers bustled between tables clad in cute red and white checked shirts and denim aprons, ferrying platters of fried chicken, meatloaf, and mile-high apple pie. "Greg, can you believe it?" Gina exclaimed, greeting them with a flower-dusted hug. "The new home-style concept has been a huge hit. We've been packed to the gills since we reopened last week. I never knew this place could be so busy." Greg shook his head in amazement as he looked around at the happy, chattering diners tucking into their meals with gusto. Gina's down-home cooking had struck a chord, drawing in families, couples, and co-workers looking for an unpretentious taste of nostalgia. With the warm, welcoming atmosphere and belly-filling favorites, Greg's place finally had a clear identity to set it apart from the trendy competition. Over the next few weeks, Greg threw himself into supporting Gina's vision, working hand-in-hand with her and Lori to fine-tune the menu, train the staff, and get the word out about the new and improved Greg's Place. Gina even enrolled in some culinary classes to up her game, impressing Greg with her tireless commitment to making the restaurant the best it could be. Bit by bit, Greg felt his broken heart starting to mend. The pain of Jessica's betrayal would always be with him, but it was easier to bear now that he had Lori by his side and a thriving business to be proud of. Watching his mother dote on Lori like a future daughter-in-law, seeing his restaurant packed to the rafters night after night, Greg knew he had been given a precious second chance, and he was determined not to waste it. 1 month to the day after his fateful bet with Mike, Greg called his old friends and invited them to Greg's place for a celebratory dinner. After demolishing a groaning table full of Gina's famous fried chicken, corn pudding, and blackberry cobbler, Greg couldn't hold back his grin as he showed them the books. Thanks to Gina's home-cooked magic, the restaurant had raked in a cool $1.2 million net profit, shattering all of their wildest expectations. Greg's place was the hottest ticket in town, with reservations booked out for months. And with his personal life back on track and his heart full of new love and hope, Greg finally felt ready to close the door on his painful past and embrace the bright future that stretched out before him. As he raised a glass of champagne and pulled Lori close, Greg knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but with his restaurant thriving, his loved ones by his side, and a fresh outlook on life, he had everything he needed to weather any storm. Greg was finally home.